The grand chamber of the Galactic Council loomed over Ethan, an immense structure of shimmering light and deep shadows. Crystalline columns soared towards an impossibly high ceiling, where holographic nebulae swirled in an endless cosmic dance. The air thrummed with the weight of millennia of pronouncements, a history of what was considered justice in this remote part of the galaxy. Ethan's wrists rubbed against the neural restraints binding him as he faced the Council of Seven, their features obscured by shimmering veils of energy. He shouldn't even be here, and nobody deemed worthy of a trial. He was just a background player in someone else's story, a maintenance technician on the Starship Odyssey, until this moment. The accused will state his designation and role. The Chief Arbiter's voice resonated with synthesized perfection. Ethan Hayes, human maintenance technician aboard the Star Carrier Odyssey, he responded, the words heavy in his mouth. He'd recited this introduction countless times, playing his assigned part. And you are accused of tampering with established narrative streams, violating story protocols. The Arbiter paused, voice heavy with meaning, and developing an inappropriate relationship with a protected individual. Designate Lyra. Ethan's eye sought Lyra. Even in her drab prison garb, she was captivating. Her amethyst skin shimmered, reflecting the chamber's ethereal light in shifting patterns. Their gazes met, and he caught a glimpse of vulnerability beneath her composed exterior, fear, yes, but also a determined resolve. This is ridiculous, Ethan declared, straightening. You're treating people's lives as if they're mere plot points in some cosmic drama. The youngest Arbiter leaned forward, their veil rippling. That is precisely their nature, human. The galaxy's stability depends on maintaining narrative coherence. When minor figures deviate from their assigned paths, the result is disorder. A bitter laugh escaped Ethan. Minor figures? Is that how you see us? Non-player characters in your grand game? You were assigned a role, the Chief Arbiter stated. Maintenance technician, background support. Your function was to maintain atmospheric authenticity aboard the Odyssey while the primary narrative centered on Captain Maxwell's diplomatic endeavor. And what about her? Ethan gestured toward Lyra. What was her part to play? The chamber seemed to grow colder. The Yeren female was intended to instigate interspecies tension, culminating in a tragic, but necessary, conflict that would unite the outer colonies. Instead, she chose to deviate from her storyline by forming an emotional bond with a human of no narrative consequence. Lyra's voice, infused with the melodic undertones of her species, then resonated through the chamber. I chose to see beyond the narratives you imposed. Ethan helped me realize we are more than the roles you assigned us. You are a danger, the eldest Arbiter rasped. Engineered by your kind to cause devastation. That is your function, your story. Ethan felt a disorientation within his mind, like a software error, but deeper, more fundamental. The neural restraints flickered. You're mistaken, he said softly. Stories evolve, people evolve. The restraints wavered again, and he understood they were sustained by belief in the system, in assigned roles, in the unchangeable nature of narrative law. He looked at Lyra, taking in every detail, the subtle iridescence of her skin, the intelligence blazing in her eyes, the gentle curve of her lips when their gazes connected. She wasn't just a plot device, she was real, complex, alive with potential. We all have the right to determine our own narratives, Ethan declared, feeling the restraints weaken. The Chief Arbiter rose, energy crackling around their form. You are a corruption within the system, a contagion tainting pure narrative streams. You will both be erased, and narrative integrity will be restored. No, Ethan said, and the word carried the weight of defiance. We're no longer characters in your story. The restraints shattered. The crystalline barrier shattered around Eric and Layla as they plunged into the void beyond the Galactic Tribunal. Hand in hand, they tumbled through space, the prescribed narrative of the Tribunal dissolving behind them like so much cosmic dust. Layla's grip was firm, her violet skin warm against his palm despite the frigid vacuum. They weren't falling into oblivion, but into a realm of infinite possibility. As the atmosphere of the planet below began to embrace them, a wild joy illuminated Layla's face. This wasn't how bit players were supposed to behave. I hope you have a plan for landing. Layla shouted over the roar of atmospheric entry. Not a clue, Eric yelled back, but I'm great at improvising. Her bright, unrestrained laughter followed them down through the burning air. They were crafting their own story now, and this exhilarating freefall was just the first chapter. The quantum currents of reality shimmered and danced as they descended. Through some desperate manipulation of dimensional mechanics, Eric managed to materialize an escape pod around them, slowing their descent. As the pod stabilized, Eric finally had a moment to absorb the incredible turn their lives had taken. He looked at Layla, remembering how it all began, just 3 months ago on the Valencia. He was performing routine maintenance on the quantum core drives when he first saw her, a Yaren diplomat whose violet skin and ethereal grace had stopped him dead in his tracks. He dropped his quantum spanner, creating a resonance cascade that somehow disrupted the ship's narrative matrix. You know, he said, managing their wild descent, I should probably explain what's actually happening. The Galactic Tribunal isn't just a court, it's a massive AI that controls what they call narrative stability throughout the galaxy. Layla nodded, iridescent skin shimmering in the starlight. Our entire civilization exists within interwoven story patterns. Most species don't even realize it. They just live out their preordained roles. But something went wrong, or right, when we met, Eric continued. I was supposed to be background noise. You were meant to be the tragic catalyst for an interstellar war. Instead, Layla finished, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his breath catch. We disrupted the pattern. Your consciousness somehow developed a virus-like ability to break predetermined narratives, Eric said. And when I saw you, I didn't see the role you were assigned. I just saw you. 3 months of clandestine meetings in the Valencia's quantum garden, sharing stories and dreams while evading the narrative enforcers, had led them to this moment. Each whispered conversation was an act of rebellion, each shared laugh a fissure in the foundations of reality. The escape pod shuddered as it entered the lower atmosphere. Layla's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his. The touch sent a wave of warmth through him, defying the cold logic of their universe's programming. We're living proof that free will exists, she whispered, that genuine connection can shatter even the strongest predetermined patterns. Eric turned to her, drawn by a force stronger than gravity. Her violet skin seemed to glow from within, her eyes holding galaxies of possibility. Without hesitation, he pulled her close. Their lips met in a kiss that rewrote the reality around them. It was gentle at first, then deepened with the intensity of colliding stars. The pod system sparked and flickered as reality struggled to process this deviation from the script. When they finally parted, breathless, Eric noticed the quantum readouts displaying impossible numbers. Their kiss had generated enough narrative instability to hide them from the tribunal sensors. Well, Layla said, her smile brighter than any star, I guess that's one way to crash a system. Eric laughed, the sound pure and spontaneous. So much for being minor characters, huh? The planet's surface rushed up to meet them, a vast expanse of possibility. They were no longer bound by prescribed roles or preordained endings. They were writing their own story now, one kiss at a time. The quantum currents of reality shimmered and danced as they descended through the atmosphere. Their escape pod, materialized from Eric's desperate improvisation with dimensional mechanics, buffered their wild descent. As they steadied, Eric finally had a moment to process the extraordinary turn their lives had taken. He looked at Layla, remembering how it all began, just 3 months ago on the Valencia. He'd been performing routine maintenance on the quantum core drives when he first saw her, a Yaren diplomat whose violet skin and ethereal grace had stopped him dead in his tracks. He dropped his quantum spanner, creating a cascading resonance that had somehow glitched the ship's narrative matrix. You know, he said, managing their wild descent, I should probably explain what's really happening here. The Galactic Tribunal isn't just a court, it's a vast AI that maintains what they call a narrative stability across the galaxy. Layla nodded, her iridescent skin catching starlight. Our entire civilization exists within interwoven story patterns. Most species don't even realize it. They just live out their predetermined roles in countless overlapping narratives. But something went wrong, or right, when we met, Eric continued. I was supposed to be background decoration. You were meant to be the tragic catalyst for an interspecies war. Instead, Layla finished, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his breath catch. We corrupted the pattern. Your consciousness somehow developed a virus-like ability to break predetermined narratives, Eric said. And when I looked at you that first day, I saw you asterisk, Eric said softly, not the role you were supposed to play. Just you. 3 months of secret meetings in the Valencia's quantum garden, sharing stories and dreams while hiding from the narrative enforcers, had led to this moment. Each whispered conversation had been an act of rebellion against their prescribed roles, each shared laugh a crack in the foundation of reality itself. The escape pod shuddered as they entered the lower atmosphere. Layla's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own. The touch sent electric warmth through his body, defying the cold logic of their universe's programming. We're living proof that free will exists, she whispered, that genuine connection can break even the strongest predetermined patterns. Eric turned to her, drawn by a force stronger than gravity. Her violet skin seemed to glow from within, her eyes holding galaxies of possibility. Without thinking, he pulled her close. Their lips met in a kiss that rewrote the reality around them. It was gentle at first, then deepened with the intensity of colliding stars. The pod system sparked and flickered, reality itself struggling to process this deviation from the script. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Eric noticed the quantum readouts displaying impossible numbers. Their kiss had somehow generated enough narrative instability to hide them from the Tribunal sensors. Well, Layla said, her smile brighter than any nearby star, I guess that's one way to crash a system. Eric laughed, the sound pure and unrehearsed. So much for being minor characters, huh? The planet's surface was rushing up to meet them now, a vast expanse of possibility. They were no longer bound by prescribed roles or predetermined endings. They were writing their own story now, one kiss at a time. The stellar vagabond touched down on a deserted, terraformed island. Crystalline beaches stretched endlessly beneath twin purple suns. The moment they stepped onto the shore, Eric felt something shift in the fabric of reality around them, as if the very atoms of the air were whispering secrets. He was finally ready to understand. Layla gasped beside him, her violet skin seeming to pulse in harmony with the alien sunset. This place, it's like it exists outside the Tribunal's narrative matrix entirely. Eric reached out with his mind, feeling the quantum structures that composed their reality. With growing amazement, he realized he could see the code beneath everything, not just see it, but touch it, shape it. Watch this, he whispered. Concentrating, the sand at their feet began to shift, particles realigning at his command. Slowly, deliberately, a small pavilion materialized before them, crafted from local crystal and wrapped in flowering vines that shouldn't exist on this world. How are you doing this? Layla asked, her eyes wide with wonder. I'm starting to understand, Eric replied, his voice distant with revelation. The virus isn't just breaking narratives. It's giving me access to the base code of reality itself. The crystalline beaches of their island sanctuary shimmered under the twin purple suns. Layla, her violet skin catching the otherworldly light, turned to Eric. Do you ever think, she mused, trailing a fingertip through the phosphorescent sand, that this might all be a dream? Eric, his mind still buzzing with the echoes of the Tribunal and the impossible escape, pulled her close. Sometimes, he admitted, but does it really matter? Isn't what we feel real enough? He held her gaze, the intensity of their connection a tangible force in the air. He still couldn't quite grasp the extent of his newfound abilities, the way reality seemed to bend to his will, but here, with Layla, it felt right. He hadn't fully understood what the Tribunal meant when they called Layla a weapon, a danger to narrative integrity, but he knew that whatever she was, it was magnificent. Over the following days, they explored their private paradise, discovering hidden coves and waterfalls that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Each night, they slept under a canopy of stars subtly reshaped by Eric's will, crafting their own private mythology in the heavens. It was during a sunset swim, watching Layla's form glide through the luminescent water, that the full weight of their situation, the impossible reality they'd created, settled upon Eric. he still had fragmented memories of another life, another journey. But Layla, her laughter echoing in the twilight, was the constant, the anchor tethering him to this extraordinary present. Standing in the shallows, water droplets like jewels on Layla's skin, she looked at him with knowing eyes. "Something is changing in you, isn't it?" she observed. Instead of answering, Eric focused his will, the water around them swirling and coalescing. Dissolved minerals crystallized, taking shape in his hands. He held up a ring, perfectly formed, embedded with stones that shimmered with the same ethereal light as Layla's skin. "I don't know what's real anymore," he admitted, his voice husky with emotion, "but I know this is. We are. And whatever reality we're in, I want to share it with you." Tears welled in Layla's eyes, reflecting the twin suns. "Are you asking?" she began. "Marry me," Eric finished simply. "Here. Now. In this place where we write our own story." Their wedding was a symphony of light and sound, orchestrated by Eric's burgeoning powers. A cathedral of living crystal rose from the sand, catching the light of both suns. Layla wore a gown woven from starlight and sea foam, flowers that bloomed nowhere else in the galaxy adorning their path. They spent their honeymoon exploring the island and each other, their love a vibrant force that seemed to warp the very fabric of space-time. But in the quiet moments, when Layla slept beside him, Eric's dreams grew increasingly vivid, filled with fragmented images of cryopods, colony ships, and a long journey between the stars. Sometimes, in these dreams, he saw Layla, trapped in another pod, so close yet separated by an impenetrable barrier. "Do you ever feel," he asked one morning, as they lay on the beach, "like this might all be a dream?" "Sometimes," Layla finished, tracing patterns on his chest with a fingertip. "But does it matter? Isn't what we feel real enough?" Before Eric could reply, a faint alarm sounded in the distance, growing steadily louder. The sky above their paradise began to flicker like a faulty hologram. "They found us," Layla whispered, her voice strangely distorted. Eric reached for his powers, trying to stabilize their reality, but something was different. The code felt resistant. As the alarm intensified, he pulled Layla close, the double beat of her heart a frantic rhythm against his chest. "Whatever happens," he whispered urgently, "find me." The last thing he saw before reality dissolved was Layla's violet skin fading, like a dream upon waking. But her voice, clear and strong, echoed in the gathering darkness. "Always," she promised. The twin suns of Kepler 186f cast long shadows across the crystalline dome of Eric and Layla's home. A month had passed since they awoke from stasis, yet the lines between dream and reality remained pleasantly blurred. Layla stood at the viewport, her violet skin bathed in the alien sunset. Sometimes, she mused, tracing a fingertip across the glass, "I wonder if we're still dreaming." Eric came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. The ring on his finger, an impossible artifact from their shared dream, shimmered with otherworldly light. "Does it matter?" he murmured, kissing her shoulder. "I suppose not," she smiled, turning in his embrace. "Though I do miss your reality-bending abilities sometimes." Their laughter filled the room, echoing through unseen dimensions. Unbeknownst to them, billions of light-years away, in a realm perpendicular to conventional reality, the central chamber of the Galactic Tribunal was in an uproar. Impossible, the eldest arbiter's form flickered with barely controlled fury. "They've achieved quantum entanglement across dimensional barriers. The anomaly has evolved beyond our containment protocols." Holographic displays showed Eric and Layla's new life unfolding, their work establishing the colony, their quiet moments together, the subtle ways reality seemed to bend around them. "They believe it was all a dream," the youngest arbiter observed. "Perhaps we should simply let them be." "No," the chief arbiter's voice resonated with power. "Their union represents an unprecedented threat. The anomaly has found a way to infect even our highest security protocols." "An asterisk she asterisk?" The arbiter's form shimmered with distress. "She was meant to be our ultimate instrument. Instead, she's become a catalyst for disorder." "Dispatch the narrative enforcers," the chief arbiter commanded. Whatever existence they think they've found, whatever happiness they believe they've earned, it ends now. Find them. Bring them back. At any cost. Back on Kepler 186f, Eric and Layla walked hand in hand through the growing settlement, oblivious to the storm brewing across dimensions. They had chosen a small house near the edge of the colony, where the terraformed landscape met the planet's native ecosystem. You know, Eric said, watching auxiliary ships deliver more colonists, I keep thinking about something you said in the dream, about being engineered as a weapon. Layla's step faltered. Strange. I have the same memory. But in this reality, I'm just a xenobiologist. She hesitated. Though, sometimes I feel something inside me. Something, more than what I'm supposed to be. Eric squeezed her hand, feeling the quantum resonance between them pulse. Maybe we'll never know what really happened in that dream. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe, Layla agreed, her gaze drifting to the stars emerging in the twilight sky. Or maybe our story isn't over yet. As night fell on their new world, as they held each other close, neither noticed the subtle distortions in the reality around them. Neither saw the quantum shadows gathering at the edge of the settlement, taking the shapes of figures in ceremonial robes. The hunt had begun. But this time, the hunters didn't understand what they were truly dealing with. Because love, true love, has a way of rewriting even the most carefully constructed narratives. And somewhere in the vast tapestry of existence, an anomaly continued to spread, carrying with it a simple but revolutionary message: every heart has the right to write its own story.